Hello and welcome to Bizarre Bureau, where we dive deep into the world's most fascinating mysteries. What if I told you that the history you learned in school, the timeline of civilizations, inventions, and empires, might be a complete fabrication? What if everything from ancient Rome to the Renaissance happened hundreds of years later than we think? And what if a catastrophic event wiped our collective memory, forcing humanity to piece together a past that never really was? This isn't the plot of a sci-fi movie. It's the core of a mind-bending idea known as the phantom time hypothesis and the new chronology theory. Stay with me because today we're questioning the very foundation of our history. The story begins with a German historian named Herbert Illig in the 1990s. He was studying early medieval architecture and noticed something odd. There was a strange lack of archaeological evidence and written records for a specific period from the year 614 to 911 AD. It was almost as if 297 years just vanished. Illig proposed a radical explanation. These years never happened. He called it the phantom time hypothesis. According to Illig, the Holy Roman Emperor Otto III, in collusion with Pope Sylvester II, wanted to be the ruler who ushered in the year 1000 AD. It was a hugely significant date, full of religious and prophetic meaning. To achieve this, they allegedly fabricated nearly 3 centuries of history, inserting fictional rulers and events, including the legendary Charlemagne, to bridge the gap. They altered documents, forged chronicles, and effectively fast-forwarded the calendar. Think about it. We have detailed records from the Roman Empire and the late Middle Ages, but that period in between? Historians call it the Dark Ages for a reason. It's notoriously murky. Illig argues that this isn't because records were lost. It's because there were no records to begin with. It was an empty slot in time, artificially filled in later. Now, before you dismiss this as pure fantasy, consider the calendar. Our modern Gregorian calendar, which we use every day, was introduced in 1582 to correct inaccuracies in the older Julian calendar. The Julian calendar was drifting out of sync with the solar year. Pope Gregory XIII's reform skipped 10 days to realign it, but Illig and his supporters claimed the calculation was off. Based on the known drift of the Julian calendar, the correction should have been 13 days, not 10. The 3-day difference corresponds almost perfectly to the 297 phantom years. Illig proposed. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe it's a mathematical echo of a massive historical cover-up. But the rabbit hole goes even deeper. A Russian mathematician named Anatoly Fomenko took this idea to a whole new level with his new chronology. Fomenko wasn't just questioning a few centuries. He was questioning almost all of ancient and medieval history. He used statistical analysis on historical texts, comparing events, dynasties, and rulers' biographies from different eras and regions. What he found was staggering. He claimed to have discovered uncanny similarities and duplicate patterns. For example, he suggests that the history of ancient Rome, ancient Greece, and the medieval Holy Roman Empire are just different retellings of the same events, like a historical echo. He argues that many famous figures are phantom duplicates of later people. For instance, he posits that the events of the Trojan War are actually reflections of conflicts in the Middle Ages, and that many ancient philosophers were created to give a false sense of historical depth. And everything before that is a vast, tangled web of forgeries and misinterpretations created during the Renaissance. He believes that events we place in antiquity, like the building of the Egyptian pyramids or the life of Jesus, actually occurred in the medieval period, roughly 1,000 years later than we've been taught. Fomenko points to inconsistencies in dating methods. He argues that things like radiocarbon dating and dendrochronology, tree ring dating, are unreliable for periods further back than 1,000 years, and that their results have been calibrated based on a pre-existing and flawed historical timeline. So it becomes a circular argument. The science confirms the history, and the history confirms the science. But what if the starting point for both was wrong? Another piece of evidence often cited is anachronistic technology. Think about the Antikythera mechanism, an incredibly complex astronomical calculator discovered in an ancient Greek shipwreck. Its sophistication seems baffling for its supposed era. Around 100 BC, proponents of a shorter timeline say this makes perfect sense if ancient Greece was actually much closer to the Renaissance, a time of great mechanical invention. The same argument is applied to architectural marvels like cathedrals and pyramids. Could they have been built with medieval technology that we've simply misdated? So, if all of this is true, why would someone go to such lengths to create a false history? The motive, according to these theories, is power and control. By creating a long, illustrious past filled with powerful empires and divine mandates, rulers could legitimize their own authority. History, as they say, is written by the victors. The new chronology suggests it was not just written, but invented. This leads us to an even more dramatic idea, the mud flood theory. This theory often gets intertwined with phantom time and suggests that a worldwide cataclysmic event, a massive mud flood, occurred just a few centuries ago, perhaps in the 18th or 19th century. This event buried the great cities of a previous highly advanced global civilization, what some call Tartaria. Look at old buildings and cities around the world. Have you ever noticed windows and doors on the ground floor that are partially buried? Proponents say these aren't basements. They're the original first floors of magnificent buildings, now submerged in feet of dried mud. The survivors of this cataclysm, they argue, lost their history and technology. The new powers that rose from the ashes then constructed our current historical narrative to hide the existence of this advanced past. The grand, ornate buildings we call neoclassical or Victorian are not from the 19th century. They are the reclaimed and repurposed remnants of this lost Tartarian empire. So, let's connect the dots. Imagine a scenario. A highly advanced global civilization exists until a few hundred years ago. A massive mud flood or other cataclysm destroys it, burying its cities and resetting humanity. The survivors, with fragmented memories, start over. A new elite emerges, and to consolidate their power, they concoct a new history. They take the jumbled stories of the recent past, stretch them out over thousands of years, create phantom empires like Rome and Greece, and invent centuries of dark ages to fill the gaps. The timeline gets officially reset. Is this plausible? Well, it's important to state that mainstream historians and scientists overwhelmingly reject these theories. They point to mountains of corroborating evidence from different fields: archaeology, linguistics, astronomy, genetics, that all support the standard timeline. For example, ancient astronomical records from different cultures, like the Chinese, Babylonians, and Mayans, all align with our current chronology and record celestial events like eclipses exactly when our timeline says they should have happened. If 300 years were missing, these records would be completely out of sync. Furthermore, historians argue that the lack of evidence for the early Middle Ages is an overstatement. While it was a period of decentralization and less monumental record-keeping than the Roman Empire, we still have countless manuscripts, coins, legal documents, and archaeological sites from that time. The idea that Charlemagne was a fabrication is dismissed by the sheer volume of contemporary accounts of his reign from various independent sources across Europe and beyond. As for the new chronology, critics say Fomenko's statistical methods are flawed. He looks for patterns but ignores the vast differences in context, language, and culture. Finding similarities between the lives of two kings born 1,000 years apart doesn't prove they are the same person. It just shows that the lives of kings often follow similar patterns of war, politics, and succession. And the mud flood? Geologists explain buried building levels as the natural result of cities being built on top of themselves over centuries. Streets get raised, ground levels shift, and old first floors become basements. It's a well-documented urban phenomenon, not evidence of a single global cataclysm. So, where does that leave us? Are these theories just elaborate works of fiction, or are they pointing to a truth so big we can't even comprehend it? Maybe the truth is somewhere in the middle. Perhaps our timeline isn't completely fabricated, but it might be less certain than we think. History is, after all, an interpretation of surviving evidence, and new discoveries can always change our understanding. These theories force us to ask a crucial question. How do we know what we know? We trust historians, archaeologists, and scientists to piece together the past for us. But what if the very framework they're using is flawed? The phantom time hypothesis and the new chronology are powerful thought experiments. They challenge us to look at the world with fresh eyes, to question assumptions, and to remember that the official story isn't always the only story. What do you think? Is our history a solid, unchangeable fact? Or is it a fragile story that could be rewritten at any moment? Have you ever seen a building with buried windows and wondered about its true story? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. I read every single one. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the bizarre and the unexplained. If you enjoy questioning reality with us, please hit that like button and subscribe to Bizarre Bureau for more dives into the mysteries that surround us. And don't forget to ring that notification bell so you never miss an episode. Until next time, stay curious.